In this video, we'll learn how to make a full screen responsive animated landing page. Alright guys, let's go ahead and get started. I'm excited to share this full screen landing page with you with the animated text and button as you see here. So on the right, as you can see, this is the mobile version for how it's going to look on, say, an iPhone 7. And no matter how wide or narrow the screen is, that full screen landing is always going to display at 100% height and 100% width, so the whole screen, whether it's on your cell phone, tablet, or the desktop version, which we're seeing right here. So underneath it, we just have some text to make some space under there for us to scroll up and down to see that it stays at full screen, and then there you have the animate, easy, and get started buttons animating on their way in. So as you can see, when we flex it down, and then I'm going to flex it up in just a second here, it's going to change its size, the text and the button, about 3 times, I believe. So after we lay out the basic HTML and CSS, we're going to add a couple of small media queries that gives it the responsiveness here, as you're seeing with the change of the size and the text, with the text and the button. So let me just bring it up to full screen here so you can see. We're going to start to see a little bit more of that really awesome sort of mountain backdrop image there. And the animate, easy, and get started button are always going to stay centered for us. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and jump over to my text editor here. In the description of this video, I've included a link for you to download these starter files that I have right here. So if you need to, go ahead and just pause the video for a moment and go and navigate over to my website so you can download the starter files and work with me here. So the text editor that I'm going to be using is called Sublime Text 2. I believe they have version 3 out now. Another great text editor you could use is called Brackets. Alright, so once you have the starter files, go ahead and just open up index.html and style.css in your text editor, and open up index.html in your web browser, which is going to be a blank screen right now. So the web browser that I'm using is just Google Chrome, which is what I usually use for these tutorials. So here I have in the head of our index.html file the title of the website. Then what we have is the viewport, device width, initial scale 1 for mobile websites here. So just remember that meta name when you're creating mobile sites. And then what we have is a link to our style sheet. So this is the main style.css sheet that we're seeing right here. And then beneath that we have 3 links to jQuery.com to retrieve a couple of jQuery and CSS files to make the animation look really smooth in our case here. Alright, so next what we have are 2 different style sheets that are in the CSS folder. So we have one for Animate.css, which I'm going to talk to you about later in the video, so you can select your own animation style if you want. And then Waypoints.css, which works with Animate.css. Alright, so then we have the JS folder. I'm just going to clean these up. And we have both JS files for waypoints, which basically what waypoints does is it delays the animation for Animate.css. So you don't have to really worry about waypoints, but later, as I said, I'm going to show you how you can customize the animation so you can have it go in, like 100 different ways. It's pretty cool, this Animate.css feature. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we're going to lay out is going to be a section class that we're just going to call intro, and that's going to span the whole full screen landing page section. So it's going to come down to the bottom of the image, and it's not going to include the text beneath there. Alright, so let's call that section class intro, All right. And then go ahead and drop down, and within section class intro, we're going to do another class. So we'll do a div class this time, and we're going to call it div class inner. And don't get too caught up on the names of these classes or the purposes for now. It's going to make a lot more sense when we get to the CSS, which is going to take up most of the tutorial here. So now we'll do kind of this inside section here with the text and the button. So we're also going to give that a div class. Let's call it div class content. All right, and then drop down. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to wrap the heading 1 for Animate Easy. And after that, we're also going to wrap the button with an animation class. So we're going to wrap them individually with these, because as you can see, that Get Started button kind of scrolls up like a half second after the Animate Easy text does. And later, I'm going to show you how we can change the delay there if you want also. So here I have Animate.css. I'll put a link to this in the description of the video as well. And you can pick whatever animation style you want here. I really like the bounce in up effect for this text here, and I think that's what Animate.css uses on their landing page as well. So go ahead and just write section class os-animation and then data-os-animation equals and then in quotations we'll do that animation I really like in just a second, and then do data-os-animation-delay equals, and then quotations, I'm going to put 0 seconds for now. So you can do a delay here if you want, like 0.3 seconds or 1 second. And then I'm going to do the bounce in up animation here for the Animate Easy text and the button also in just a minute. So just make sure that when you write in the animation, it matches the capitalization that they have there at Animate.css. So in this case, bounce is lowercase, and then in and up start with uppercase characters. All right, so now within this OS animation class here, the section class OS animation, I'm going to go ahead and add the heading 1 text for Animate Easy. All right, so now if we go over to our index.html file here in Google Chrome, you'll see that that Animate Easy text is now doing the bounce in up animation when you refresh the page. Okay, so now let's drop down and let's do the animation for the button first, and then we'll add the button itself. So you can just copy this section class OS animation itself if you want, or you can write it out again if you want, and change the animation to your preference. So for the button, we're going to make it a class, so a link class basically, or anchor text, and we're going to call that btn. And then for the link, you can put a link to whatever website you want here. I'm just going to put a hashtag for a blank link for now, and then just write get started for the get started text there. All right, so now if we come back over, there we have the get started link, which in the CSS we're going to turn into this button here. And as you can see right now, if I refresh it, they're both coming up at the same time. So if we just change this to 0.1 seconds, 0.1 second, it's going to come up a fraction of a second later. So I think that that looks best, because anything else, the bounce gets kind of weird when it gets to the top. It doesn't look like it's in sync that well. All right, so now let's drop down, and the last thing that we'll do in the HTML is just add that text, all the text at the bottom there. So you can just use dummy text if you want, or press a bunch of keys. I just did a Google search for the dummy text, and I'll just copy and paste that in here in the paragraph tag. And then I'll just do it one more time to make sure that we have a bunch of space at the bottom of the website to see the full effect of the full screen landing page. Alright, so there we go. So that's it for all of our HTML. As I said before, the majority of the tutorial will be in the CSS, style.css file. So let's go ahead and move over to that. So the first thing that we'll notice is that we have some Google fonts laid out for us at the top there, which we'll reference in a few minutes. And we have some media queries started for us here with their max width set. The first style we'll add will reference the HTML document itself and the body of the document. So let's move back over to style.css and write HTML, body, and then open and close your swirly brackets. And let's give it a margin of 0, a padding of 0, and then a height and width of 100%. So what some people call this is a reset style. Basically what we're doing is we're taking away any inherent margin or padding or different height and width that the browser itself wants to kind of push onto our HTML document. So watch when I refresh this. So as you can probably see, that took away some margin on the left hand side there, as well as other sides that the browser wanted to put onto our document, and we said we don't want that margin there because we want this image to take up 100% of the screen when people land on our page here. So let's move on to the intro class, which is going to take up the full screen no matter what size it is when it's open. So go ahead and just write .intro, and then we'll give it a height and a width of 100%, and then let's say margin auto, and let's give it the background URL. So the place that I got the image here with the mountain, it's a website called Pexels, P-E-X-E-L-S. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste the link to this image, which you can paste into your CSS style here in the description of the video. If for whatever reason that link doesn't work anymore, I have a version of the picture myself, so I'll just upload it to my website. Alright, so go ahead and just paste that image in there, and if we refresh, there we see it in the background, though it's kind of displaying a little odd for us here. So keep in mind that image the dimensions for it are huge, so it might take a second for it to display if you have a slow internet connection. So just be mindful of that. Alright, and then let's add a little CSS trick here by saying display table. And what that's going to do is it's going to take away that little bit of space at the top that we're seeing. Another way that we can do that is by using the top 0 style here, and I'm just going to put that in as well, just in case your browser for whatever reason prefers top 0 to display table. Alright, so now let's give it the background size, and what we're going to say is cover, and that's going to make the image display at full width. So it's a little bit off to the side here, not matching up completely to the original, but we'll get it matching up before the end of the tutorial here. So now let's drop down and reference the div class inner. So since that's inside of section class intro, let's reference that first, and then we'll do the inner class. So just write .intro and then .inner, and write display table dash cell. So this, in combination with vertical align middle, will allow us to basically vertically align the animate easy and get started text for the inner section here. Alright, and then write width 100% and max width none. So there we have it refreshing, and it's displaying in the center there. little bit of the image is dropped off the bottom of the screen here, so it doesn't look 100% centered. So now write max width none, and we'll drop down to the content class next. Okay, so here we have it centered, and now let's do the content class, which is what the heading 1 and the button are inside of. So just write dot content, and then we're going to give it a max width of 600 pixels. So if you end up writing like a wider text than Animate Easy, you might want to increase the max width here. That's up to you. And then, so watch this now, or we won't see it yet, but let's center it and then we'll see how the width takes place. So just write margin 0 auto to center it. And now if we refresh, we'll have it in the center of the page, and it's still displaying to the left, so it's kind of within that 600 pixel width to the left. So let's write text align center, and there we have it centered on the page here. So we'll just move it up a little bit there. So to get it up there, let's just write padding dash bottom, and we'll go with 28% here. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Okay, so now let's move on to our heading 1 text, the Animate Easy text. So we're going to reference that with H1, and I'm just going to create a little space here so we're not looking at the bottom of the page. So here we have our heading 1 or H1 text here. So since that's inside of the content class, let's write dot content h1, and then let's give it the font family, the first of the 2 font families from the Google fonts at the top of this. And if you want to choose your own Google font, just do a Google search for Google fonts and you can gather this import URL info for your particular font. So this one's called Yantramanav. Is that good enough? Yantramanav? I don't know. All right, and then write comma sans serif. So that's kind of the backup font there. All right. So now if we refresh, there we have the font family changing, and let's change the size of it. So just write font dash size, and we're going to make it a percentage. So let's go with a pretty big percentage at 600%, and there we have it. And now let's make the font weight a little smaller. So write font weight 100, so this will make it really slim. A bold font weight is like 600 or 700. And there we go. And then let's give it a color. So this is going to be kind of an off-white hex value. So just write hashtag E1 EF E9. Okay, and then refresh, and there we have it. Alright, so that's looking pretty close to the original here. And now let's drop down and let's give it a smaller line height so there's less space between it and the Get Started button. So just write line height 70%. Alright, so that's pretty good. So now drop down and let's get started with styling the button. So if you remember, the button has a class that's just called BTN for the Get Started button here. So there we have a class BTN. So write .btn, and then let's reference that second font family, which I think is called Montserrat. All right. So font family Montserrat, and just remember to do the single quotation and then comma sans dash serif, and then let's give it a font size of 135%. Okay, and then refresh. Alright, so now it's looking pretty close, but let's change the font weight. So just write font weight 400, just kind of like in the middle, not too thin, not too bold. And then let's give it a color, the hex value of 3A6168. Alright, and then refresh. Okay, so there we go. So if you're wondering where I'm getting these hex values, is I have a color picker tool, and I'm basically just taking the colors from the clouds and the mountains to get these text colors here that we've chosen. Alright, and then text transform uppercase and text decoration none to get rid of the underline here. Alright, so now it's looking pretty close there. Let's give it the border. So just write border solid, and I'm just going to reference the same hex value, so 3A6168. Alright, and then padding. So as you can see, it's like pushed up right against the text now, so let's give it some padding. So we've got padding of 10 pixels on the top and bottom, and then it's a little bit more on the left and right, so we'll do 20 pixels on the left and right. So just write padding 10 pixels top and bottom and 20 pixels left and right. And then if we refresh, it's looking pretty good, but we still need a border radius. So just write border radius, and let's go with 9 pixels. Alright. Okay, so now it's a little rounded there. And now let's drop down and move on to our hover color for the button. So write btn : hover, and then let's change the color to that, it's kind of like a off-white color. So the hex value is CBDFD6. And then let's do the same with the border. So write border solid, hashtag CBDFD6 for the hex value, and then let's go ahead and refresh. So now if we hover over it, there we have it turning white. So the original, if you notice, the line for the border is a little slimmer. So let's write 2 pixels, then refresh. Okay. And actually this is the finished version we're looking at. Alright, so this one, there we have it, but it has no delay when we hover over it. It's just turning white and going back instantly. So let's write transition and then all 0.5 seconds. So that's going to give it a little bit of a transition there when we hover over it to change colors. So see how it doesn't change like instantly, it kind of delays a tiny bit, which looks pretty nice, I think. Alright, so now let's drop down and let's just make that paragraph text a little bigger underneath the image, and then we'll move on to the media queries. So we'll reference that with the P for paragraph, and then let's give it a font size of 200%, line height of 200%, refresh, and that's kind of gigantic there. I'll change this to 150 and 120. And then let's just give it a different font family to make it look a little softer here. So let's give it a font family of sans serif. All right, now if we refresh it and drop down, that looks a little better. Again, we're just using this to kind of get the feel of the full screen landing page. All right, so now let's just fix this little image issue with it not displaying in the center here. So go up to the intro class, so .intro, and where we have the background URL with the URL to the image here. So after the parentheses closes, just write no dash repeat 50%, 50%. All right, and then refresh, and there we have the image looking just like the original here. All right, so that does it for all of our full screen CSS here. So now we can go ahead and move over to our media query. So let's just size this down and get an idea of where we're at before we add the media query. So as you can see, the text is way too big. As for the image, the background image is actually going to already be set for us no matter how wide or narrow we make the website. So basically what we're going to be changing is the size of the Animate Easy text, the button where it says Get Started, and the padding that we have underneath the content class, so we can kind of push the text and button up a little bit as we size it down. So let's go ahead and scroll up here. So as you can see, for the content class, we have padding bottom 28%. So let's make that our first style here in the media screen and max width 900 pixel query here. So just write .content for the content class, and then we'll give it a padding bottom of 30%. All right, so now that we've done that, let's just size down the screen here with the Animate Easy text so we can see that text change, because we're going to do the heading 1 next. So just write .content for the content class and then H1, and let's change the font size from 600%, I believe it was, to 450%, and then we'll be able to see this change take place at this 900 pixel or less mark. Alright, so now let's drop down and start styling our button for the 900 pixel mark. So we'll just reference that with the BTN class here, and then let's change the font size, and then we'll change the padding in between the border and the actual text. So just change the font size to 110%, and then we'll change the padding for top and bottom to 7 pixels and left right 15 pixels. And let's just give it a quick look here to see how the button changes. So there we go. Now similar to the Animate Easy text, that's dropped in size. Let's give it a little more padding though. So let's change 7 pixels to 9 pixels and 15 to 17. Alright, that looks a little bit better. And now let's go ahead and just copy these 3 style selectors here, and we can just paste them right into the max width 768 media query here, and we'll just make some minor changes. So let's change the padding bottom to 40%, the font size to 300%, and then let's actually leave the font size for the button here at 110%, and then increase the button here button text here to 130%. So that looks a little better. And now as we size it down, you'll see that it changes again there at the 768 pixel mark. And then let's also just add the paragraph text here, just to keep everything in line. So let's give that a font size of 120%. And then let's change the line height just to 100% from 120%. Okay, so there we go. So now we have it changing for us twice with 3 different sizes. And let's add our last media query here for sort of the mobile width at 480 pixels. So I'm just going to copy this one for 768 to include the paragraph text at the bottom. And let's change the padding bottom to 50%, the font size to 100%, and then the padding for the button, I'm just going to change that to 7 pixels and 15 for 768. And then this one, let's make it 6 pixels and 14 pixels. And then 250 for the heading 1 text. So I'm kind of jumping around, but if you need to, just pause the video for a sec. But that does it, you guys. So that's our last bit of style that we're going to add. So as you can see here, it's animating quite nicely for us and proportionate to the mobile version, just as it is for the full width version here. So I want to thank you for watching. Thanks for sticking around with me through the tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.